In this video, Cbutters, or Cam, we're going to be talking about how to increase the performance on your laptop studio or on another gaming device. We have a couple tips for you, and Cbutters is the expert on this. I'm really excited to have him on the channel today. So, Cbutters, can you tell me a little bit about your background, and then we'll jump right into the tips.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been running kind of just a tech YouTube channel since I think 2007, just lots of things I was interested in. I have a separate career, but I really like tech stuff and I like sharing what I love. And I have, ever since the Surface Pro 3, I kind of got tacked onto Surface devices and have really just kind of been showing performance and how to improve it on every generation of Surface since then. So that's kind of what I do over on my channel.
Yeah, YouTube occasionally says, "Hey, you have the same audience as Cbutters," and so I end up watching a lot of Cam's videos and enjoy them. And super specific technical information, which is something that I lack in my videos. So I'm really excited that we're doing this. So there was a video I watched that you did recently, and I want to start off with one of our strongest tips and one of the ones that you brought up. So the laptop studio, and this is going to really apply to a whole bunch of different devices that have different modes. So I want you to share what you found out with your testing.
Yeah, in that original video, we found that most people are just using the laptop studio as a laptop. And I wanted to see if putting it in different modes, if it would actually change the power profiles of the device. And what we ended up finding is, if I show my desk area here, here's my Surface Laptop Studio, is if you put it in the actual studio mode like this, you actually get a pretty drastic bump in performance and basically it's able to sustain a higher power load while it is in the studio mode, because I think the thinking that the Surface team has is, well, if the keyboard's getting too hot, they're going to notice, but if this it's in studio mode and the keyboard is covered, we can let that area get a little bit hotter, so you see quite a bit better performance when you have that screen pulled forward.
So it's the a toasty fingers problem. They're not wanting complaints on YouTube videos from people like us.
Yeah, and that's pretty common for Surface. The Surface hardware has always done special things with chassis temperature. Uh, from the Surface Pro 3 and 4, even, I do this a lot. If you throw a fan up and on your Surface, you suddenly see a lot better performance. But it's because you cool the chassis. It allows more power to go to the processor and the graphics.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like the whole put your laptop on a cooler type of concept, but it just is natural.
Yeah, and it's especially true for those Surface devices, because some machines, they just say, "Hey, my CPU's too hot. Let's pull it back." But Surface says, "I don't care if the CPU is hot or not. I just care how hot that chassis skin temperature sensor is." So
Got it. So now for those of you who are watching, I am not sitting right next to Cameron. So our shoulders are not like almost touching, and Cameron can't see what this looks. Hey. So he can't see what this looks like yet. I'm not on a bench in Cameron's studio. So we're we're just chilling in our respective studios, which I think is really funny. Like people can't tell. So we have a handful of other tips for you in setting up the laptop studio, and again, whatever computer you're using, the couple different ones. So Cam, we talked about performance mode, and then we also talked about a minimum processor state. And so would you talk about the performance modes? Maybe do a screen share on that.
yeah, so I actually went a little further based on Justice's suggestion, which was to not only try the studio mode but also the tablet mode. And what I found was pretty interesting. So I'm going to share my screen here and show you what I found. So this blue line is the Surface Laptop Studio as you are in the standard mode where um, the laptop is just in laptop mode, notebook mode. And what you see is like performance drops off very quickly. Like and when I did this test before, it was a lot cooler, and I had a fan on it to kind of not have temperature be a big issue and just see what the power modes would do. But in this test, when I was retesting, I didn't put any fans on at all. And what you can see is that blue line performance just drops and drops and drops. That's the blue line when you're in laptop mode.
What is the time span on this?
This is about 6 minutes, and this is
Oh, okay.
full load on processor, full load on GPU. And
Wow.
so
Yeah,
when
that
you're
is
running this being
significant.
full bore, this is how many watts that the machine is able to pull from a wall, which is very indicative of performance in general.
Right.
So what you can see is you're using this in notebook mode, your performance drops to like 60% of the
Mm-hmm.
original peak performance.
Right.
But the red line and the green line, the red line is when it's in the studio mode. And you can
Okay.
see, like we mentioned, it when you have that screen pulled forward, you just sustain a ton of performance, right?
Yeah.
The surprising thing in the new test is when we're in tablet mode, and that's that green line right there.
Mm-hmm.
That green line is when you have, and I'll just, that's when you have the screen fully laid down against the tablet, which also covers the keyboard. And therefore, I think they're assuming, hey, it's okay to let things get a little bit hot, but it actually outperforms when you're using this as a laptop when you have it in the tablet mode, even. So that green line, sustains about, close to 90 watts. Studio mode is 95 watts,
Okay.
but very similar, like sustained performance.
Yeah, that's great because I have mine in tablet mode virtually all the time. So it floats above me at about eye level. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's good news. Oh,
Yeah.
that's gnarly right there.
So yeah, and these are the core clocks on the CPU, and you can see, it, it was surprising. And one of the kicker at the end of this basically is I while running that blue test, I actually have a little bit more information here at the end, and I can click into that. What you see happening at the end of my test while it was throttled down to nothing, I put it into studio mode, and you can see immediately that performance comes roaring back.
Wow.
So it's obvious that this actually works, and you can gain, like before it was like in my previous test it was 10%. It wasn't, if you are in an air conditioned room and you have airflow over it, it won't be
Right.
super drastic. But if this was in a hot room, and you can see even in a hot room, the you put it in studio mode, all your performance comes back. This drop down here is me going from studio mode to laptop to tablet mode. So you can
Right.
see it dips
Okay.
down to that other line, and then I put it back into notebook mode, and then back to studio mode, and you can just see, hey, this is like,
Wow.
I mean, it's like a switch. You
Yeah.
can turn performance on or off by using those modes.
Wow. Yeah, that's significant. All right, so now there's a power mode inside of Windows. So if you right click or if you click on your I'm not sure what it's called on the bottom right corner next to the
Your
time and
your
date.
taskbar battery icon is what I'd call it.
Right. So then you can right click on it, or I'm sorry, you can just click on the battery icon and it should bring you to the power and battery settings. All right,
One
so
sec.
you are on here and we're going to click here and then we're going to click on this charging 100%. And then right here in system power and battery, we have best performance, better performance, and recommended performance. Cam, can you talk about those a little bit? Does that make any difference?
Yeah, it does, and it's funny because it's like, when do I use one versus the other? And the recommended actually is a pretty nicely tuned profile for doing, well, for getting the maximum battery life. because that recommended profile really limits the watts that the computer pulls when on battery.
Yeah.
So if you're doing something like watching a video or like just browsing the web, I switch mine into that recommended mode. But if you're doing anything a little more intensive than that, maybe drawing in a real graphic suite, or if you are playing a game, you wouldn't want to be in that recommended mode. You'd want to switch it up to best performance. But do know that your battery life will
Yeah.
use quite a bit more power. I mean,
Right.
you might be going from somewhere like 6 hours to 3 or even less when you let it bump
Hmm.
up like that.
So I did a test Tuesday morning, and I was really excited. This is when Cam and I talked earlier this week. I was really excited because I thought I had figured out how to keep the performance on battery up. So like if you switch off of charging to just battery and you're playing a game, you see a drastic difference in performance. It can go to completely unplayable, half the FPS that you were having before. And so I changed a couple settings, and I'm like, okay, I got it. But I also enabled something through the command line called Ultimate Performance Mode, which is essentially what it's supposed to do, I think, is just simply change the minimum processor state while on both battery and, well, while connected to power while charging. I know it's so strange for me to say. It sounds weird. And so I'll show how to do that here, but it didn't actually make a difference after I changed it and then changed it back. It stayed the same. So I don't know what happened, or if you can speak to it, or if someone in the audience, someone watching, understands what's going on there.
Yeah, I can speak to what I think might be the issue. I won't say anything definitively about that, but one thing you see with Surface devices in particular, you see it with some Lenovo, and I'm sure other people do it too, but they have like special firmwares for managing thermals on the device. And even when you change certain things, there's usually some sort of like either internal framework service that actually is constantly modifying those things anyway. So even though you try to change a setting, it might take for a second, but then it just overrides it. And especially with
Okay.
Surface, where they have they really try to tightly control, the performance of the machine. As you can see in these different modes, they can override anything pretty instantly based on what
Right.
they think should be happening. And I think that's why some of those things you're like, well, I set it to this, and we see that a lot with there's a program called Throttle Stop, and basically these performance, especially on the CPU, have long power draws and short power draw settings. And even though you try to change them, they may take effect for a split second, but basically then the Surface firmware comes in and kind of overrides them.
Okay. Says we're not going to let you damage the machine. Okay, so here I'm in control panel, and then which I went to. You can press the Windows key, type in control panel, navigate to hardware and sound, power options, edit plan settings, and you guys should have been able to see this while Cam was talking. So now I'm in the ultimate power plan, and actually I'm going to switch to balanced so you can see what you would see. Processor, power management, minimum processor state, on battery 5%, plugged in 5%. That means that it will allow you to use as little as 5% of the processor while you're doing whatever you're doing, which means that it will slow down certain things. It will try and figure out what do you need, and after it figures out what you need, then it's going to adjust the processor there. So there's some latency. This is what I understand or read, but I'm not sure if that's fully accurate. But I did see actually slightly better, which is a weird thing to say, slightly better performance with battery power versus plugged in. Which doesn't make any sense to me, but was playing Horizon Zero Dawn and a couple other games, and it was like 3 to 4 FPS higher when I was on battery, which was weird. And Gears of War 5 also, like It was,
Interesting.
yeah, it was interesting. And I'll throw up a little clip of that in this video as well, so you can see that. But
Hey, fetch. Now this will do.
like I said, I switched it back to balanced, and then it didn't adjust. It still stayed the same. All right, so Kim, do you have any other final tips? Um,
Yeah, for just for gaming performance in
hmm?
general.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I did a whole video on this. I called it the Ultimate Notebook Undervolting Guide. But one of the things that you can do, especially I mean with the Surface Laptop Studio, it does have that NVIDIA GPU in it, and there are ways to undervolt that GPU. And people kind of think about overclocking and undervolting and what's the difference, but they're kind of the same thing. They move hand in hand. But basically, because it has that NVIDIA GPU, you can run any number of software tuning. My favorite is MSI Afterburner. And
Okay.
MSI Afterburner is particularly useful because you can set a voltage curve. If you want to get into the nitty gritty, you can watch that video. We can put the link up there.
Yeah.
But really, what that does is you can say if normally at 1 volt you were going to have 1.2 gigahertz on the GPU, you can basically say, well, at zero point 0.9 volts, I want it to do 1.2 gigahertz on the GPU. And the effect is within your power budget, which is 50 watts on the Surface Laptop Studio, it will actually make the clocks go higher with the same amount of power. And people worry about overclocking, but for a long time, the way the GPUs are set up, like it has a power budget, it's going to stick to that, which means it's not going to run any hotter or less hot.
Hmm.
Um, but you can push the clocks up a little bit higher within that power budget, up to the point of instability. You can get
Okay.
unstable with it, but a good guideline, if you open up MSI Afterburner, you set the clock to plus 100 and the memory to plus 300, you're going to be fine, and you can see an
Okay.
uplift of at least 10% in most games, if not higher, to up to 14% is what I've been able to tune my Surface Laptop Studio to.
So if you're using the studio mode or tablet mode, and you're using MSI Afterburner, and you're set to best performance, and you change the minimum processor state, and you're on battery, and the last tip that we're going to share here, talk about here, is DLSS, NVIDIA DLSS, which is an upscaling AI-based algorithm or process that it dramatically increases the FPS for games. And so you can go from like Horizon Zero Dawn at like 25 to 30 frames per second up to around 60. So we're talking about a massive improvement there. And then these other different things, you're looking at going from 25 or 30 FPS to around 70, 80, 90 FPS by doing these different tips. It's a humongous difference. And
Absolutely.
DLSS is amazing. It really is amazing. And there's around 200 applications. We'll put the link to the official list from NVIDIA, but fantastic for a handful of games. And in order to do that, and we're not going to go into a tutorial on that because we have a minute left or so of the video, the remaining time. So we're not going to go into a specific tutorial on that. but you have to lower your resolution by about half. So the Surface Studio's 2400 by 1600 resolution, drop it to somewhere like 1800 by 1200.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
1200 by 800, I
1200 by
think.
800 would be half, but
Well,
yes,
it's like quarter resolution, and yeah, just that's actually a really cool mode. It like if DLSS aside, because it kind of does the same thing, but if you're playing certain games, if you put your screen, it's like 4 pixels turn into 1 pixel, and it's perfect scaling, and that's why that resolution is really good, at least for visual acuity. So.
right. Yeah, if you're doing it, you want the aspect ratio to stay the same so that things don't look weird. All right, and so then sometimes it turns out that Windows doesn't know exactly which GPU or processor to use, and so sometimes it uses integrated graphics. And so Cameron and I were just talking, and there is a way here. Actually, I'm gonna turn something off because during this I've had a scene transition. So we're gonna have a couple scene transitions while we're talking. It's not gonna look great um, on the previous section, but the audio will be fine. Okay. So here I'm going to show you how to select that app inside of Windows. Okay, so we're going to go into Settings, we're going to go to System, and we're going to choose Display. And here at the bottom of Display, there is the Graphics option. So we're going to click on Graphics, and then you can choose here the game that you're playing. So I have Horizon Zero Dawn, Gears 5. Now, Windows does a good job of choosing. So we're going to go into Options, and then you have the options of let Windows decide, which is set to high performance, and then right underneath it says what high performance is. So in this case, it's the Nvidia GeForce 3050 Ti. Now, Cameron, you were saying that some games, some apps.
So I can think of a few examples of applications where you really need to do this. Minecraft is one of those. If you're running the Java version of Minecraft, it always uses the iGPU, and everyone's like, well, I've got a 3050 in this thing. And it doesn't need a lot of graphics performance anyways, but if you're using shaders or some mods on it, you actually have to go in and tell it to use the Java executables, the Windows Java executables under the high performance graphics. Otherwise, it's not going to work right on the certain laptop studio. And particularly VR applications, if you're running whether the Oculus framework or the Steam VR framework, setting some of those VR executables for both of those setups is key to actually getting good performance.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've had quite a few problems with trying to do VR and just working really inconsistently, and this is probably a good part of that, why it gets stuck or has problems or different issues.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Cameron has a channel here on YouTube, and I'll put the link to Cameron's channel here. And Cameron, if you can put a comment, I'll pin it to the top so you can just click on his channel that way also. And Cameron, what are the main things that you focus on your channel?
Primarily, I lately it's just the things that I'm interested in. I've done a lot of comparisons right now between, Surface Laptop Studio and the one of my favorites, the ROG Flow X13. I
Yeah,
also
it's
do like
super
Surface
cool.
Pro 8, all sorts of different devices, and then I also focus on certain VR performance aspects and just whatever I think is cool and what I'm working on.
Yeah, so we talked about doing a couple different videos in the future. One with the X16, which I'm really excited about because it's got a really bright screen that gets up to 1100 nits, and it's got the 3060 and 3070 Ti or 3070.
3070 Ti.
Yeah, huge deal, and it's pen enabled, and it's theoretically supposed to be a little bit better in pen quality than the X13, Z13, X13. What is it?
Kind of both of those. Both of those I've noticed had roughly they have the same panel. So
Yeah, so it's a better line quality than those ones. We did a test with that with the Renacer stylus, and it looked actually really nice. So we're planning on doing a little collaboration there and talking about the Surface Laptop Studio 2, which I'm excited about this. This would be kind of my dream machine, and I think Cam is right on the same page. Bump it a little bit, and we've got something that really hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, I almost want to start talking about it right now. Like I'm so excited for what that device could be. So
All right, so that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for subscribing. Subscribe over to Cam's channel and to this one right here if you guys like Surface devices and want to know how to get the most out of them. All right, thanks Cam for being on the show.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.